Hello everybody and welcome back to War Thunder Mobile. Today we're going to be ranking the last of this series, rank 11. I don't know if this is going to be the end of the series. I do know there's going to be some rebalancing probably coming up in one of the next updates due to the fact that there is a roughly rank 11 tank that is going to be at rank 13. So we may do some re-rankings eventually, but as for right now, we're just going to look over what platoons we have and what rank they are, or are at rank 11 as of right now. So first up, we have the M1A1HC, and by I mean platoons later, I do mean individual vehicles. M1A1HC, we have with a 120mm cannon, 75 km/h speed forward, 42 in the reverse, 5-second reload time, which is pretty good, 480mm of penetration on the heat round. The APFSDS does have a considerable amount of pen. It's not the highest at this rank, I don't think, though this is the top tier APFSDS round for America at rank 11. And of course, like I said, in the future this is going to change when the ranks get switched around. But as of right now, the turret rotation speed is very good. The frontal armor is pretty solid. We got a very heavy NERA plate, so it is extremely good against heat rounds and stuff of that liking. As for APFSDS, it's going to go possibly through if it has higher levels of penetration, though with lower levels of penetration, not so much. We know that. The turret armor on this vehicle is really good, as most of the Abrams do have better turret armor than the rest of the vehicles at the rank. But of course, we have the hull weak spot, or the turret ring weak spot, I should say, which is very vulnerable. And in the crew compartment, there are additional exterior fuel tanks that can eat up APFSDS and potentially save the driver from one hit, though the second hit will go through and kill the driver. So it's a little bit tricky to kill, and it does have a APS that doesn't work so much at the rank that it is at, but if it were to go up against some lower rank vehicles, possibly in a custom match, the APS would work to deter those ATGMs. It's a pretty fun vehicle, it's pretty easy to use, and I do believe it is slightly taller than the next vehicle, the IPM1. Now, the IPM1 is based off of the base M1 with various improvements. The P does stand for improvements, I believe, or improvement. It does have only a 105mm cannon, though it does have a APFSDS round with a considerable level of penetration. Same speeds as the M1H1HC, as well as the turret traverse. Same reload speed. Solid vehicle overall. It does, of course, with my personal experience with these vehicles and just how they play, I do have fun using these vehicles because they do have a faster reload than the Eastern tanks. However, even with the faster reload, that somewhat lack in penetration, or the fact that you don't exactly have anything like the ATGMs that they can fire, do make it a little bit not as useful in all cases, though it does give you an advantage in most of the cases that you're going to be going up against. Very fun vehicle, very fast vehicle. Similarly, we have the M1128, which has a very high speed, 14 kilometers in the reverse and 106 forward, 105mm cannon. This one does have Mexus 2C, which the other M1128 in the rank 10 platoon also has. A longer reload, 7.5 seconds. However, you can mostly hide the hull on hill positions so that only the gun is peeking out. And you do have, let's see here, you have -5 degrees of depression, which isn't a whole lot, though it will be enough to slightly peek over smaller hills, though it's not going to work on larger maps like American Desert or not American Desert, because that's mostly flat. El Alamein is what I meant to say, where El Alamein is very hilly. You're going to have to choose your places carefully to properly get your damage in, and that is a longer reload, which doesn't help a whole lot, not very much, but you do have a very powerful round that you're using. I think it's called M900. It's a very good APFSDS. And then lastly in this platoon we do have the M247, which is very broken because these shells are currently doing a lot more damage than they should, and they're killing MBTs left and right somehow. It's a very solid platoon. I enjoy this platoon a lot. it's rough to rank the rank 11s because they're all fairly level in their level of firepower and whatnot. I'm going to put this on the more positive side. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next up, the T80U. The T80U does have a lot of protection pretty much everywhere. You do have ERA as well as the rubber fabric screens to protect your lower hull from explosive or ATGMs or any form of chemical energy round. It is, let's see, Contact 5 ERA, which is very solid as an ERA, which can even stop APFSDS. So if someone fires APFSDS like right about here, where it should probably go through because your composite isn't that strong, if it does happen to hit the Contact 5 ERA first, it is not going to go through. So that is some additional protection. However, of course, there's the well-known weak spot of if anyone fires APFSDS to the lower hull, you don't really have a whole lot of armor there. You do have, of course, the composite screen, but it's not very, very thick in that area, and that's going to go right through, and typically that's a one-shot if they do hit your ammo rack. You have a 125mm cannon, a 6.5 second reload, which is fairly good, a slow return to reverse speed, 12 km/h reverse speed. I don't know if we've already said that. But it is a solid vehicle. It does have slightly better reverse than most other Russian MBTs at its rank or the ranks around it. And of course, you do have a lot of protection because your ERA as well as your traditional armor being pretty solid. You can fire APFSDS, I can fire ATGMs. I don't remember between the T90A and the T80U, but I'm fairly certain one of them can fire tandems. So we're going to have to, figure that out later. But it's a pretty solid vehicle. The T90A does have an APS. This one is slightly better than, I'd say, the Brennus at least, because it can cover more of a general direction, though it does have some blind spots, I believe. Those we can't exactly visualize here, but I think it is, in general, pretty similar in the coverage that it has, as well as the Abrams. Same 125mm cannon, I'm pretty sure it's the same. 7.1 second reload because the auto-loading system is slightly different. Similar rounds for the most part if, they carry the same cannon. But this one does have a slow reverse speed of only 5 km/h, which is going to certainly hurt sometimes because there are going to be situations where you're going to want to back up, but you won't be able to. But besides that, the traditional armor on this thing is also extremely good. It does also have Contact 5 ERA, but this one does cover a little bit more of the tank. So, very helpful. Very good. I'd say this probably has more protection than the T80U even. You just don't have as much mobility. Next up, the 2S25M. 2S25M is essentially the same cannon again, though this time 7.1 second reload. Does it have an autoloader? Okay, same autoloader as the T90 and T72 series. You have a very fast speed, 77 km/h forward, 22 in the reverse, only a crew of 3, which I believe all of these vehicles do only have a crew of 3. Pretty fast turret rotation speed, but that does come with the downside of you having not that much armor. It is very vulnerable to being killed, and the ammo, when you get too much of it, is kind of stored randomly in the hull, which isn't very helpful. But it's a pretty fun vehicle to play, though not necessarily what I would want. If anything, I think I'd rather go with the BMP-2M with the tandem ATGMs, but, that's not in this platoon. And lastly, the ZSU-23-4V. Very fast reload, very mediocre mobility, shall we say. I'm looking forward to when we will eventually be able to replace anti-airs with missile anti-airs, if that becomes an option. But as of right now, this is a fairly solid pick. Though it's not going to be killing MBTs left and right. I'm going to give this platoon a... I want to say 7 out of 10. I do like some of the vehicles. I wouldn't necessarily say the platoon in general is better than the Abrams. It's just this particular vehicle and how it plays. Like, the Abrams can get a little bit repetitive, though this does offer some variety, which I do appreciate. Alright, next up, the Challenger 2 TES. 120mm cannon, 65 km/h speed forward, 41 in the reverse, crew of 4, 5-second reload, which is pretty good, and pretty sensational turret armor, I believe. It is, there's a lot. To say the least, there is a lot of turret armor. It does cover a lot, and there's additional turret armor on the sides, which the Abrams doesn't have necessarily as much. Besides that, we do also have a lot of ERA pretty much everywhere, as well as the composite armor on the hull, though of course you do have the driver's hatch, which is a very vulnerable spot. 44 degrees turret rotation, and I think this thing does have enough pen on the APFSDS that it could go through pretty easily most places on tanks like this. And besides just the ERA, you also do have slat armor on the sides that will also help protect you against heat rounds or ATGMs. And you even have that going all the way down to the bottom back of the tank, which is very helpful. It does not have an APS system though, so that's a little bit of a downside, but it does have pretty good mobility. It's a bit large as a tank, though it does offer a lot of opportunity to do a lot of damage and to do it quickly. The Challenger 2 is essentially the exact same thing. You just do not have as nearly, or any slat armor for that matter, and just a couple of ERA components. Besides that, the armor is pretty much the exact same, or at least it should be. I mean, we have Romor A ERA. Interesting. Whereas we have this other block of NERA instead. Cool. So they're not too different. Solid vehicles, though. Okay, Desert Warrior, we've gone over before. I at least appreciate how in this platoon, this thing actually carries ATGMs, where that's not been a consistent thing for the past couple of vehicles. So for that, I do want to give this some kind remarks. The Marksman, I have seen a couple times been used in a anti-ground roll, and the protection on the hull, at least for this thing, is pretty good. The turret, not so much. It can be easily destroyed by autocannons, which is not very fun, though it is a good vehicle to use. It does have a very fast reload. Not quite as many shells as the ZSU 23-4, but it is very fun to play and very fast. And hopefully when the radars work, it can be even better than it is now. I'm going to give this platoon a 7 out of 10. I do like it as well. I just wish we had more of an option to use ATGM vehicles at the moment, though that is going to be fixed in the next update. The TKXP, a lot of people do appreciate this platoon, a lot of people don't like it. 120mm cannon with 77 km/h forward and reverse speed on the primary vehicle. Crew of only 3 with a 4-second reload and 480mm penetration high explosive anti-tank round, and also carries a APFSDS round with similar, if not almost the exact same level of penetration. It has very little composite armor. It is a very sneaky tank. It is a very mobile tank. This is really good for players such as myself who prefer to be more in a sniping style and don't intend on seeing a whole lot of enemies all at once, at least. Though I don't really know if I'd say this is the ultimate vehicle for this rank. There are some who believe it is, and that is fair enough. They're allowed to have their own opinion. And yeah, I'd say it's pretty fun to play. The Type 90 is similar, though you don't have as much speed. You have 80 forward, which is more than the TKX by 3, but you only have 37 reverse, which is considerably worse. The general armor layout is a bit different as well. You do have more of a wraparound spaced armor combination with the composite armor on the turret, and you don't have nearly as much ammo stored in the just midsection of the hull, though it is still there in that fuel tank area. Not a bad vehicle. I would recommend using this from time to time, though again, not exactly a frontline fighter, but it's certainly good support tank. The Type 16 does also follow that through. You do have a 105mm cannon, 110 km/h speed forward, 40 in the reverse, 6.7 second reload, which is a decent reload speed, but it is slower than the Western tanks at this rank. Crew of 4, which is a bit large for a vehicle like this, I'd say. I wouldn't expect a crew of 4 to be all in this, but there they are. All of your ammo is mostly towards the middle and rear, kind of spaced out, which isn't very helpful, and this thing is very vulnerable to most forms of high explosive or ATGM. So just be wary of that. Good turret rotation speed though. The Type 87 is, I think we've gone over this before, it's essentially a Gepard. Or at least in the guns that it fires, they're essentially the same. You have a 58 km/h speed forward, 8 in the reverse, which isn't very much. A very good turret rotation speed for an anti-air, 80 degrees per second, is very good. And yeah, this thing is pretty solid as an anti-air vehicle. I don't know what else to say about it, really. This platoon is quite enjoyable. It is very fun. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I wish it did have more armor, though, of course, that's not what it has. And finally, the last platoon at this rank, which I do have premiumed because of the partnership program. It has a 6-second reload. It is the Leopard 2A4M, 120mm cannon, 75 km/h speed forward, 34 in the reverse. You do have a crew of 4 and decent access to fairly good rounds, though you're not going to get the access to like DM53 or anything on that level yet. This is a pretty good tank. You do have a lot of pen on the rounds that offers. You do have KEW, or the kinetic energy, because W is the chemical symbol for tungsten. So I believe that's what it fires. 57 degrees per second turn time and a reload time of 6 seconds, which is a little bit longer than the other tanks at this rank, though it is still a pretty good reload time. Composite screens pretty much all along the sides, as well as the, of course, wedge at the front, which gets more common amongst the later tanks, or at least some form of composite on the front, especially for the German tanks. It does have some weak spots, though they're not essentially all there. It does have the exact same armor components underneath as the Leopard 2A4. It's just on top we have all of these composites, as well as the slat armor that covers the sides back here, which is very helpful. You do have a turret ring, which makes you slightly more vulnerable, and of course if you stack ammo in the hull, that makes you more vulnerable as well. So if you just avoid carrying too many rounds, you'll be pretty much good to go. The Leopard 2PL does have slightly better turret protection. It has essentially the exact same characteristics though, because it is of course a Leopard 2 A4 essentially just underneath all of this. As we can see, the armor is practically the exact same as a Leopard 2A4, so it pretty much just is a Leopard 2A4 with additional changes to it in the composite armor. Because of that, the composite does make it a little bit difficult to get through, especially in the turret. These things do perform extremely well in a hold down position. Otherwise, not so much. 57 degrees per second turret turn time we've already talked on for both vehicles, and they do have the exact same mobility characteristics. Besides the protection, there's really no difference between them. The Puma IFV has a 30mm cannon, I think. Yeah, 30mm main cannon. This IFV Puma does not have ATGMs, unlike the other Puma in the War Thunder tech tree on PC, because there's one other one that does have ATGMs. You do have good mobility to keep up with the Leopard 2PLs, 77 forward, 33 reverse, crew of 3, which is kind of tricky to kill if we look inside. They are just about in the middle of the tank, so if someone fires through the center right about here, it's not really going to do a whole lot of damage. And you do have explosive reactive armor blocks placed around here, so if someone fires a heat round, it might not even go through. These things have been known to be fairly difficult to kill, which is really good for them. It does have a pretty decent penetration on the APFSDS rounds that it fires, and a 64 degrees per second turn time, which is very helpful. You do also have a electro-optical active protection system, which is MUS, which is again just an APS that's supposed to have the ATGMs go away from your tank. However, this APS does not really work, again, because the missiles at this rank are too advanced. If it were placed at a lower rank or something like that, then they would have the chance at working, though they do not. Besides that, it is a fairly fun vehicle to play. I remember the first time I used this for a video. It was very fun to use. I expect, so long as this thing isn't damaged too much by the balance changes, it'll stay and remain fun to use. The Gepard we've gone over numerous times already. It's a very good anti-air that some people even choose to use in a ground roll. 0.1 second reload, 129 degrees per second turn rate, which is very good. You also have a search radar as well as a tracking radar, neither of which work at the moment, but hopefully they'll be working soon, and decent mobility all around. This platoon is really fun to play. I enjoy it a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say it's way better than the other platoons at this rank, though of the platoons at this rank, I do prefer this platoon out of all of them, so I'm going to give it a 8. I know we're just doing a solid lineup here with very little variation, though again, I do want to state that when you get up to this point, there's not a whole lot of, saying this platoon is awful or this platoon is good. It really just depends on your playstyle. This one fits my personal preference the most. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys again soon in the next one, which is going to be very interesting.